Having previously explored the concepts of religion with God and religion with people, we now move deeper into the heart of the matter, the essential inward dimension of religion. If you like this video, please like and share it. I really appreciate it. If you found something meaningful in this video that made you pause or see differently, why not becoming part of the growing community behind it? By becoming a channel member, a patron, or making a small donation, you help keep this space alive and expanding. Your monetary support does mean the world to me. Many thanks for supporting my small channel.
While the earlier discussions focused on the structure of human responsibility, divine reward, and the wisdom behind religious legislation, what follows is a more profound inquiry into the metaphysical foundation that underlies these expressions. Here, Ibn Arabi shifts from the outward manifestations of religion to its ontological and spiritual core. In this deeper framework, Ibn Arabi explains religion not merely as a system of surrender and compensation, but as the very unfolding of al-Haq in the mirror of being. This dimension of religion is inseparable from his larger metaphysical doctrine, in which every ontological event is a form of tajalli, or God's self-manifestation. According to him, what flows from al-Haq into contingent beings is not arbitrary, but is conditioned by what they themselves give back to al-Haq. In other words, the states and possibilities of creatures, as they eternally exist in God's knowledge, serve as the determining factors for the forms of divine manifestation that reach them. These al-ayan at-sabita, or permanent entities, which pre-exist in the divine knowledge, are not passive. They entail specific existential states and configurations. Thus, nothing comes into being unless its essence already requires it. And since every existential state takes on a particular form, the diversity of forms corresponds to the diversity of inner states. Consequently, each individual receives from God precisely what corresponds to their own ontological capacity and configuration. In this view, humans become the locus of both grace and hardship, not due to an external imposition, but because of the internal structure of their own being. Al-Haq's tajalli takes place in accordance with the relationship between divine knowledge and the object of that knowledge. Therefore, whatever good or evil manifests in a person arises from the person's own essence and possibility, not from some arbitrary divine decree. It is the human being who authors his own condition, and thus, it is he who deserves praise or blame. This doctrine fundamentally reframes our understanding of divine justice, not as retribution imposed from without, but as the unfolding of inner truths long embedded within the self.
Because God's knowledge fully encompasses all possible states of human beings, his manifestation aligns precisely with those states. In these lights, religion, understood as divine reward, unfolds in accordance with the essential conditions of each individual.
That is to say, it is ultimately the human being who determines the nature of this reward based on the inner reality of their own essence. At first glance, Ibn Arabi's view might suggest a kind of universal determinism, where everything is predetermined within the structure of being. However, what sets this determinism apart is that human actions are not dictated by an external force, but emerge from the person's own volition and essential predispositions. In this way, human freedom is not negated, but redefined. One is free within the bounds of their ontological truth. Religion is not only a set of outward rituals or divine decrees, but a manifestation of the inward truth of each person. This understanding of religion brings about a deep resonance between inner being and outward reality, reinforcing the notion that religion, in its core, is the appropriate response or reward to the existential state of the individual. According to Ibn Arabi, every servant comes into existence through a particular existential condition, one that is already inscribed in God's eternal knowledge. Each of these conditions yields either a pleasing or distressing outcome, depending on the nature of the essence that gives rise to it. Thus, divine manifestation in any person is not arbitrary. It reflects the particular state entailed by their essence. It is this metaphysical correspondence that determines whether a person becomes praiseworthy or blameworthy, blessed or miserable. This leads to the key concept of al-Iqtida adati, or self-entailment. Ibn Arabi holds that God reveals himself in each essence only through the states that are ontologically possible for it, and never through those that are impossible. For example, the quality of mercy cannot be said to arise naturally in the essence of a stone. This idea also helps interpret Quranic passages such as the verse about the trust, amanah, being offered to the heavens, the earth, and the mountains, who all declined out of fear, because their essences did not entail the capacity to bear such a burden.
In this metaphysical framework, Ibn Arabi dissolves the boundaries between divine action and human responsibility. Reward and punishment are no longer external judgments, but the outworking of an essence's own latent structure.
This vision grants profound dignity to the human being, not as a passive vessel, but as an active mirror in which al-Haq reveals himself according to what the mirror is capable of reflecting. Ibn Arabi reveals a profound metaphysical insight. The true reality of contingent beings is, in fact, non-existence. Only al-Haq possesses true and independent existence. What appears as the existence of created things is actually nothing other than the manifestation of al-Haq in various forms. The entire cosmos, with all its entities and their shifting states, pain, joy, transformation, is a continuous unfolding of tajalli. Quote, "You know whoever experiences pleasure and whoever experiences pain and what follows each state, because of which it is called following, ukuba, and consequence, iqab. This idea of following is allowable in relation to both good and evil. However, convention calls the good reward and the evil punishment. Because of this procedure, religion may be called or explained as what returns, ada, usually custom, for that which his state requires and seeks returns to him. Hence, religion is that which returns."
In Arabic, the root meaning of following or to follow are shaped by the terms ukuba and iqab, which are often translated as consequence and punishment. This etymological link points to a core idea that every state or action is inevitably followed by a corresponding outcome.
When the result is beneficial or pleasing, it is called sawab, reward. When it is harmful or unpleasant, it is called iqab, punishment. For Ibn Arabi, these are not arbitrary divine decisions imposed from the outside, but necessary outcomes embedded within the ontological structure of being itself. It is within this framework that Ibn Arabi understands religion as ada, a term that can mean habit, norm, or custom. Yet this is not merely social convention or ritual practice. Rather, it is a metaphysical regularity, a divine law inscribed into the very nature of existence. However, he emphasizes the original meaning of the word, which is return or repetition. For him, religion is called ada because a person's actions or inner states eventually come back to them. What one puts out into the world returns like a cycle. This idea of ada as return reflects the way religion functions. It brings back to a person what their essence has set in motion. But Ibn Arabi makes a subtle distinction. He explains that ada, or repetition, is not something that truly exists in external reality. It only exists as an idea in the mind. For instance, two people like Zayd and Amr are both humans, so they share the same general form, but they are not identical individuals. Their humanity does not literally repeat, because if it did, we'd end up with multiple separate realities of humanity, which contradicts the idea that humanity is one. What seems like repetition, like the fact that both are humans, is just something our senses perceive as similarity, not actual duplication. So, when we say religion is ada, it's true in one way, the way it appears to us, but not true in another. It's not literally repeating. The same goes for reward and punishment. They seem to follow as natural results of one's actions, but they're better understood as the manifestation of divine presence according to the person's inner state. Ibn Arabi sees these rewards or punishments not as imposed from outside, but as God revealing himself through the forms of pleasure, suffering, or experience that match the inner reality of each person. Thus, ada, as repetition, links directly to the idea of divine justice. What returns to a person is simply what their essence has prepared all along. Al-Haq continuously manifests himself in these seemingly repeated forms, but in truth, every moment is unique. What looks like repetition to us is simply a reflection of divine regularity perceived by the senses. According to Ibn Arabi, a prophet's role is to respond to the various conditions and needs of the created world, what he calls the states of the contingent. To explain this, he compares the prophet to a physician, highlighting the similarities in their functions. Just as a doctor cares for the physical health of individuals, a prophet cares for the spiritual and moral health of society. While a physician works with the natural state of the human body, the prophet, and those who inherit his mission, work with divine guidance to address the spiritual conditions of people. Interestingly, although prophets appear to serve the divine command, they are actually responding to the real, lived conditions of people. Let's take his analogy further. A doctor treats illness based on how nature has caused imbalance in the body. If the doctor simply follows the natural course of the illness without intervention, the illness may worsen. Instead, the doctor aims to restore balance and health, another possible state within nature. So while the physician seems to work against the sickness, he is actually still working within the broader laws of nature by shifting the body from one state, sickness, to another, health. In a similar way, prophets work within the general conditions of human life, but apply specific, targeted approaches to guide people towards spiritual well-being. They don't reject the human condition, but engage with it, offering solutions tailored to the needs of the time and community. Even though these approaches may seem unique, they still operate within the larger framework of divine possibilities. So both sickness and healing, disorder and guidance, all exist within the same divine order. And the prophet, like the doctor, skillfully navigates this order to bring about transformation. Ibn Arabi explains that the way al-Haq interacts with human beings happens in two ways. Everything a person goes through follows God's will, but that will is based on his knowledge, which itself reflects the inner essence of each being. In other words, people receive from God what fits their own inner reality. In this framework, prophets and their spiritual heirs do not serve God's will directly, but rather his command. Ibn Arabi makes a clear distinction. The divine will refers to what will actually happen, while the divine command refers to what God asks people to do. For example, even if someone like Pharaoh is known by God to disobey, God still commands him to obey. This shows that divine command and divine will can differ. Prophets, then, serve the divine command by urging people to do what brings about their well-being, not by revealing what God already knows will happen. If they were only serving God's will, they wouldn't preach anything. They'd just accept what's going to happen anyway. But instead, they act like physicians of the soul, offering spiritual treatment through divine guidance, even if people might reject it. Still, prophets are aware that what God commands might not match what He wills to happen. That tension is part of their burden.
The Prophet Muhammad once said that the Surah Hud turned his hair gray, and Ibn Arabi explains it's because of the verse, "So stand firm as you are commanded." The Prophet didn't know whether what he was commanded to do would actually be fulfilled or not. Only God's will would decide that, and it remains hidden until it happens.
However, those granted deep spiritual insight may glimpse things as they exist in God's eternal knowledge. Based on that insight, they can make judgments that reflect the unseen structure of reality. Put simply, divine will and divine command are not always the same. In fact, they often differ. This difference comes from the unique inner nature of each created being, what Ibn Arabi calls the essence of the contingent. Whether a person obeys or disobeys God's command depends on this inner essence. Prophets and their spiritual heirs choose the path of obedience and call others to follow it. When Ibn Arabi says, "The prophet is the doctor of souls," he means that prophets work like physicians. Just as a doctor teaches people how to stay healthy and helps them heal when they're sick, the prophet guides people towards spiritual health. He gives them the knowledge and practices they need to find happiness and success in both this life and the next. He also provides rules and teachings that help them grow and reach their full potential.
From this perspective, religion isn't something forced on people from the outside. Instead, it grows naturally out of the way each soul was created.
Every person has a unique inner design, already known by God, that contains the seeds of certain behaviors and outcomes. God's reactions, reward or punishment, are simply the results of those seeds coming to light. In other words, divine justice doesn't respond to actions after they happen. It reveals what was already hidden in a person's inner nature. So, God shows up in each person's life in the way that their essence makes possible. There is no reward without a cause, and no punishment without a reason, and that cause is found within the person themselves. With this framework, Ibn Arabi offers a deep and beautiful way of thinking. He doesn't set God's will against human freedom. Instead, he shows how every action and truth in religion arises from the harmony between God's eternal knowledge and each person's true inner being.
Thank you so much for watching. Please watch my other videos. The continuation of this small channel is thanks to your monetary support. My special thanks go to Sean Wong. Thanks a lot. See you.